Hello guys, in this tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make an HTTP request and how to verify the HTTP response. Create a new feature, and inside the feature we create a new test. We call this test create pet owner and verify it is in the list. So first let's add the steps in the business language as the product owner would do. Given I am authenticated, when I create a new pet owner, then this pet owner should be in the pet owners list. To define this step, given I am authenticated, we'll make an HTTP request to log in and will verify the response. After the request is executed, we'll receive an authentication token which will store it inside a variable and use it later for our requests. If we want to find all the API definitions for our pet clinic demo application, navigate to this URL. You can see that we have here the authentication, owners and other functionalities. Now let's return to our test. Let's implement given I'm authenticated step. We do this by adding the sub-steps that define the behavior. So, we click on the step, click on plus, choose from basic steps HTTP, request and add the step. Now, we edit its parameters and we're going to fill in everything we need for our first HTTP call. We give it a name, for example a login, and giving a name to your HTTP request makes the test easier to understand. Now, select the method which is posed for this request. Set the header for this HTTP call, which is a content type with the value application JSON. Now click on body, add the object which will be sent. We want to send the credentials, so I will write a JSON object in order to authenticate. OK, save it and run the test. After the execution has finished, you can check that our first step from the test has passed and has the status code 200. Also, we received an authentication token which is required for our next HTTP request. For the moment, I will just copy the value of the authentication token. Now, I would like to verify the response. Click on given I am authenticated, click on plus, add a new sub-step. Now from basic steps, go to HTTP, response, verify, and add this step. Click on the edit icon in order to set the parameters. We give it a name, verify login, set the expected status code 200. We can also set the expected header key, and from body matching we select JSON verify. Inside here we put the authentication token. But we can't leave this as it is, because every time when we run the test, we have a different authentication token. We replace this generated string with a Testerum function. This function is perfect for this scenario. It tells us that we expect to receive an authentication token, but we're not really interested in the value. Testerum comes with many functions, and if you want to learn more about them, please check our documentation on testerum.com. Click OK. Save this. Once again, we have our first request, and now we validate the response. We can execute it. We see that the HTTP request was executed successfully. Click on the response step, and here we can check if the expected HTTP response is matching the actual HTTP response. Everything looks fine, so we can continue with extracting the authentication token from the response because we'll need it later for the next HTTP requests. Now we go back to edit mode, add a new substep. This time we go to vars and select given the variable with value. Edit it, add a name to this variable. As a convention, we use capital letters. For this variable, we'll have the name auth_token. OK. Inside the value, we'll use another Testerum function which helps us to extract easily the value of the authentication token. Using double curly brackets, Testerum can evaluate any JavaScript expression. To extract the authentication token from the HTTP response, we can use the following expression. This function accesses the HTTP response, processes the response body as a JSON, and extracts the value of the auth token field. For more details about data extraction, check our documentation. Click OK. We are done with the implementation for this step, given I am authenticated. We have an HTTP request which does the login, a step which verifies and validates our request, and a last step for extracting the data. Now, I want to show you that in Testerum you can define your own variables. Click on this icon here, View and Edit Variables. Now let's suppose we have this URL we're using with every execution and we don't want to write it every time. We can define a variable URL where we store its value. Back to our test, we can continue with the implementation for the next step when I create a new pet owner. We need to make another HTTP request to create a pet owner and verify the response. Click on the step, click on plus, HTTP request and add this step. Now edit its parameters. Let's give it a name, for example, create pet owner. Choose a post method. For the URL, we're going to use the URL variable, which is declared as a global variable, followed by the path. We are going to add two headers, content type application JSON and the authorization header. This application is using a basic authorization, so for the value we have to put the prefix basic and we need to add the authentication token. Because this value is dynamic with every execution, we'll use the value stored inside the auth_token variable from the previous step. To access the value of this variable auth_token, we have to put it inside double curly brackets. Now go to body and here we write a JSON object to insert a new pet owner in the pet owners list. So I'm gonna use this random owner John Smith. Click OK and save everything. Now we can execute the test. After the execution, let's see the response in the logs. For this HTTP request, we got a 201 created status code and we copied the response body because we need it for the verification. Now we have to verify the response, adding a new HTTP response verify step. We are going to do as we did before with the previous steps. We added the steps parameters. Inside we give it a name, verify creation of the owner. Set the status code 201. For the expected header key we can set content type as application JSON. From body matching we select JSON verify and inside put the expected JSON response. Again, we have to replace the ID value with a Testerum function because the ID is auto-generated. OK. Now we have the request and we have the response verification. Now we are ready to execute the test. Save everything and run the test. After the execution, check that everything was done correctly. Here is our request and here is the response with an expected HTTP response and with the actual HTTP response. Everything looks fine. We can go now to the last step and implement it. For this we'll execute an HTTP request to get the entire pet owners list and to verify that our pet owner John Smith exists in the list. As we did before, we add the steps. We add an HTTP request step which will give us the whole list with the pet owners. OK, save it and execute the test. You can see that we received a big list of pet owners, a big array with many objects. But the purpose of this test is to verify if our pet owner John Smith exists in this list. We copy all the list and we have to add a new HTTP step to verify if our owner is in the list. OK, add this step. Now give it a name, verify pet owner, set the expected status code, which is 200. Choose JSON verify, and here we paste the entire list. We see our pet owner in the list, and this is what we actually want to verify. We delete the rest of the pet owners, and now we have an array which contains only one object. At this point, we use the comparison modes which Testerum comes with. For example, we want to check that this list contains one specific object. The contains mode is automatically set in Testerum by default. Now, inside the object, we have to replace the ID value with a function is not empty. Now we want to verify that our pet owner has all the values, so we use again the comparison mode inside the object and select the exact mode. Click OK, save everything and run the test. After the execution, the last request gives us the whole list, and the verify response shows us that the pet owner John Smith exists in the list. Look how simple it is to verify the responses and search for a particular node in an array. I would like to recap what we have learned in this video. In this video we made our first HTTP requests, verified HTTP responses, and used functions to replace randomly generated values. We have learned how to extract values from an HTTP response into variables, and we have learned how to verify that a specific object exists in the response using JSON comparison modes. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.